What are you seeing this week with the prospect of stimulus? President Biden coming out making a very strong statement about stimulus. Are all the gains priced in, or is it more upside here?
I think there's more upside in the near term. I think long term, though, investors will have to be optimistic, cautiously optimistic. So, as we mentioned, I think one of the bigger catalysts is, that third relief package that's been promised by certain lawmakers. I think investors are banking on a lot of that, and that's where a lot of the momentum has been, especially when you saw it last week. And so, I want to hear more commentary, more actual details around that specific, if we're going to get that through. And it looks like what happened last week, as far as, lawmakers and Dems control of both chambers, it's looking optimistic. I think that's what investors were banking on. So that's something we have to watch for. But if you're an investor, it's to be optimistic, but also cautious when it comes to, what's going forward. Because a lot of the good news has been priced in. So if there is a correction, that's a good chance for investors to pick at stocks that they think are going to be going higher long term.
All right, cautiously optimistic, but there has to be some sectors or perhaps stocks that you're very bullish on. Can you give us one in two different sectors that you feel really good about?
Yes. Roku. This is one that had kind of been flying under the radar as far as, the popularity, but it's been performing really, really well. You saw last week that they bought the assets of Quibi, the failed platform, and they bought them for pennies on the dollar. So they're making that push into content, which, as we know, in this day and age, content is super important. Where eyeballs are is where investors, where the market, a lot of people are going. So, but they're making that push into content with already having a strong hold in the streaming wars, with being a hardware platform that all the streaming wars are licensing to. Now they're making that push into content. I think that's really strong and bodes really well. They were up about 3% on Friday on that news. I also like CLOVE Healthcare. So CLOVE finished the reverse merger, the SPAC, CLOVE Healthcare, the Medicare-focused health and tech insurer. And that's another place that I like. The tech and healthcare spaces are really strong right now. I think they're going to be marching higher.
Makes sense. What do you make of the Russell 2000 being the best performer last week? A lot of our guests call that the reopening index. Is that a sign that perhaps tech is slowing down?
I wouldn't call it a sign. I think we're seeing optimistic in both sides of that. So you saw the rotation back and forth a lot in the indexes last week. And we've talked about hedging into some of those reopening plays. And we've talked about, I think, the vaccine and the optimists on the vaccine is looking for a late summer, early fall, where, we'll have a lot of more people vaccinated. And so if you're a long-term investor, maybe people are hedging into those plays heavier. I don't think it's a rotation. It's a sign that tech is slowing down at this point. I think we still have some more near side upside in tech, and you should still be hedged long-term for reopening, but I don't think it's a sign that tech is slowing down.
All right, circling back to healthcare, we're all very hopeful that the vaccine will bring an end to this pandemic sometime in 2021, or at least bring back some sense of normalcy. How does that impact the healthcare sector, and especially your pick?
Yep. So right now we've been picked, in CLOVE and also in ETFs that are, more broad-based. And I think that if you're an investor, you have to have exposure to those areas. Healthcare and what we've done, what we've seen with the vaccine, and how that's been rolled out in a rather quick manner. Now we know that usually vaccine takes much longer to be distributed, to be made, to be produced. And what we saw with companies that were able to do that so quickly plays to a part that you have to have some sort of position in these healthcare companies. Are doing a lot of great things, and they're going to do a lot of great things going forward. So as an investor, you should want exposure to those areas, and I want exposure to those areas for myself and for my clients.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.